Hey, thanks, Emily, and it's good to be here with everyone and Mark as well. And you can see the new PowerPoint feature here where it closed captions me. So we'll see how successful that is, but maybe it's helpful for some folks out there. So anyways, what we're here to talk about is, of course, Pure Block Store and our partnership with Cirrus Data, not only on what CBS is and the problem around cloud migration, and of course, what Cirrus can do along with Cloud Block Store to help you with these things, help you to get on the Cloud Block Store, help you to get into the cloud. So I'm going to be introducing the topic of what CBS is and what it has to offer. And then Mark's going to take over and talk a bit about Cirrus, and then show, of course, a demonstration, right? No good webinar is good without a demo. So let's get into it. So first off, let's introduce the concept of what we're trying to do with Cloud Block Store. You're like, hey, why is there hardware on here? We're talking about the cloud. Well, because this is where our company started. We started with, how do we make storage simpler? How do we make it evergreen? How do we take the new technologies and deliver them to our end users without them having to upgrade or migrate or change what they have? How can we deliver these new features and make them simple, understand the ins and outs of Flash in the case of the Flash array, but deliver a consistent, simple user interface to that end user, right? And this is what we built our company on, and this is what we've continued to do for many, many years. But of course, in the cloud, you see these same issues, right? There's a lot of different types of storage, a lot of configurations, right? Provisioned IAPs. Do I need that many? If I don't, am I paying for it? Well, there's a lot of trade-offs and things to think about when using block storage in the public cloud. And so we started seeing this kind of similar problem as what we saw on premises, is that how do we simplify this for our customers? Can we do a similar thing that we did on premises with the Flash array to provide a better experience to our end users that are in the cloud? And of course, data is different. Rather, data configuration and cloud storage is different, not only just from the choices, right, but also just from some of the concepts, how you pay for it, the features that are available. A lot of the stuff that we take for granted with on-premises storage just doesn't exist, like something simple like thin provisioning, right? Data reduction. These things are commonplace now on-prem, especially in things like the Flash array, but not so much in the public cloud. So things are thought about a little bit differently and they're managed. And in particular, as more and more customers are embracing the multi or hybrid cloud world where they're managing different clouds, this inconsistency makes it a little bit difficult to manage things across the board and have consistent deployment mechanisms and control across your different parts of your cloud, whatever that might be. And so that comes up to the question, what can Pure do? What has Pure done? Well, a couple things. So first off, we extended the concept of evergreen storage, that promise, to the public cloud. And this is in the form of what we call Pure Cloud Block Store. Cloud Block Store, or shortened to CBS, is a version of our Purity software that runs inside of the Flash array, that runs inside of the public cloud. Now, this isn't a VM that we've slapped into the public cloud. We really looked at the underlying architecture and the available features of the public cloud infrastructure, the storage, their compute, the networking, and how do we make the best of this? How do we allow Purity to do the cool things that it does? How do we not restrict it? How do we take advantage of what this cloud or that cloud has to offer? And today, Pure Cloud Block Store is available both in Azure and AWS. And so one of the things that this allows us to do is to take a look at all these storage options, right? As just on-prem, where we looked at the different types of Flash and how to best use them, we can do the same thing in the public cloud. What are the storage options? How do we simplify that and deliver a single similar user interface that we have on premises, or rather the exact same one, and simplify all these things, right? Just like with the Flash array, there's no RAID to configure or storage pools. Data reduction and encryption is always on, instant snapshots and clones, right? And so taking away these different trade-offs around different storage options, we deliver the same user interface to the end user. And so that whole evergreen promise is what we're trying to build here with CBS. As new technologies get introduced by the clouds, and they will, they're doing a lot of cool stuff, we can build that into our backend and provide that value. We don't want to abstract it away. We want to take advantage of the different pieces, the benefits of the different choices, and deliver that to the end user. Now, real quick, you just kind of look at the architecture. There's two different deployments, and they're not the same, right? The clouds are not the same. So we didn't build them in the same way in the back end. The front end is the same, but concepts are the same. High availability, high durability, and of course, the efficiency of Purity itself. So inside of Microsoft Azure, It's backed by a set of Ultra SSDs where we persist our storage, and then another set that is our NVRAM for committing our initial writes from the front end. And of course, we have two controllers. These are our front end for connectivity to this backend storage. These Ultra SSDs are shared across these two controllers. And inside of that has a temporary read cache to also accelerate reads that don't need to necessarily go the whole way back down to the Ultra SSDs. This is the Azure architecture. And the AWS architecture is actually very different. We used it differently. There were different configuration options, different choices, and the AWS architecture actually came first. And one of the things we saw was there's some different mechanisms and features available to their backend block storage in Azure that wasn't necessarily available in AWS. And so we built things differently. But it also did provide us some benefits around the architecture that we landed on. I'll talk a bit about that. One, front-ended by, once again, dual controller designed for high availability. Our NVRAM is EVS-IO2 for accelerated writes. And then we have small virtual drives. Those are i3EN nodes that have instant store for its read cache, where your reads actually come from, and the writes get committed to that NVRAM. It is persisted, though, not an instant store, which is that read cache, because instant store is ephemeral. It is persisted actually back down to S3 for higher availability and durability. The availability comes from the front end of the platform itself. And one of the benefits this provides us to do as well is that since all the data is actually persisted in S3, we can completely hibernate the product, remove the resources on the front end, and bring it back online when you'd like to use it, right? Taking a little bit more advantage of the dynamic nature inside of the public cloud. And of course, we can also send our snapshots and copies off to object storage for longer term retention or archival. This is something we call Cloud Snap, where we can send it to Azure Blob or AWS S3. But it wasn't just about the technology, right, and the storage. And I mean, it's certainly, that's the fun part sometimes, but it's also about how you buy it and how you acquire it. Because this is also something that changes when you move into the public cloud. And this is also driving a lot of change with on-premises IT consumption around how things are purchased. And of course, we deliver this in what we call Pure as a Service. And Pure as a Service is many things, but one of the things that maybe is most relevant here is that it's a subscription. It's a subscription to capacity. You can buy a certain, either we go with an on-demand rate, or you can get a reserved capacity. But the point of this is that it actually crosses clouds. You can buy Pure as a Service on-prem for your flash arrays. And say it's not a lease. It's not a rental of that hardware. It's just, hey, how much capacity are you using? It's under this particular subscription. And that subscription is mobile. It can be applied across multiple flash arrays, and it can also be extended into the public cloud to CVS. And so it doesn't really matter where your Pure storage is. Pure as a Service can help you license that, right? And so if you're not sure which cloud you're going to move into, or when you're going to move, or what you're going to move to that cloud, you can use Pure as a Service on-prem, and then when you move some of these applications, when you move some of this data, or move part of the application lifecycle, a common use case you see is prod on the flash array and moving some dev tests into the public cloud for the elasticity of the compute, you can relocate that license. So you don't have to essentially relicense that capacity or lose that capacity that you bought on-prem, because it's relocated to where you're actually putting that data tomorrow or next year, as the case may be. And so that's really a key part around Pure as a Service plus CBS. As CBS extends Pure as a Service to go into the public cloud, giving you flexibility to choose when, what, and really what cloud you want to go to. So let's talk a little bit about, well, okay, cool, that's nice. Some evergreen storage, some adoption of features, some simplicity. But what else does it really do? What are the use cases specifically that I might want to look into when using Cloud Block Store? Well, a lot of these fall into a lot of the conversations that folks are having when they're starting to look at their migration or move or consideration around the public cloud is what part of the public cloud what part does it play in my infrastructure? Is this, am I splitting prod? Am I moving prod? Am I moving dev test? Am I migrating all my applications, some of my applications? Am I just providing additional availability to my applications? Like there's a variety of reasons why folks might want to move to the public cloud or move certain applications, and CBS has a play across a couple of these different things. And of course, the main one we're going to be talking about today, or rather the rest of this session, is going to be around that migration option. Now, conceptually, what direct benefit, besides maybe simplicity, does CVS offer when you're running inside of the cloud, right? And a key part of this is really around also optimizing your cloud spend, right? Instead of spending it necessarily on just additional capacity and gigs and gigs and gigs of storage in the public cloud, which you may or may not be using, you pay for what you provision, not you use. You can spend those on more value-added services in the public cloud. Because what CVS can do is, one, it has that newfangled in the cloud thin provisioning feature, right? So you're not paying for what you're provisioning, you're paying for what you're using, right? And that's a really key difference there around that layer, because when you provision new storage in the cloud, it's like, well, how much do I need? I think I need 70 gigs, so maybe I should provision 100 just in case, but then you're wasting that money. Or if it's not enough, then you can run out. There's a lot of decision that kind of goes into that right sizing of capacity, because it does cost, right? And of course, the fundamental piece of purity, of what we built the flash array on, was data reduction, right? Deduplication, compression, pattern removal, zero removal, really reducing that back end footprint, which on premises, what that meant is, well, I could put more data into flash, making the cost efficiency better. And in the public cloud, that means I'm using less back end storage resources to store the same amount of data. And built on top of that technology, everything in CVS on the flash array is built on that concept of data reduction and compression and zero removal. It's built on metadata pointers. Everything is just a bunch of pointers to this back-end pool of dedupe storage. And so our features like snapshots and clones and replication are all built with that same concept in mind. And so when creating snaps, when creating clones and restoring from these things, it is an instant process regardless to the size. And that's really a driving use case around Cloud Block Store, is that in the public cloud, snapshots are not like you're used to on array-based snapshots. And we can bring the array-based snapshot feature and benefits into the public cloud. Snapshots can be created instantly, refreshed, and this really goes well nicely with the elasticity of compute. When you do want to spin up a lot of copies, that data can be immediately available without a performance penalty to some back-end copy on access process. And then once it's done, it can be easily spun back down. And so that the snapshot and cloning behavior without capacity penalty as well, because it's 100% deduped, these snapshots, really makes a big difference, especially at scale when you're looking at the public cloud. And of course, there's other use cases around it instead of just standard IaaS inside of the public cloud. If you need additional capacity, we can extend the various VMware clouds, Azure VMware Service or VMware Cloud on AWS, to add additional storage into those VMs as well, directly from the VM operating system down to Cloud Block Store via iSCSI. And so if you need additional capacity and you don't want additional compute, or you want those same features that we're talking about in directly to like Azure VMs or AWS EC2 instances, you could do that same configuration inside of something like VMware Cloud or Azure VMware Services or solution to extend that storage capacity without extending compute. And the nice thing about this is also to add some mobility from on-premises volumes, vVols, RDMs, as the case may be, or bare metal servers into the VMware environment if you have a hybrid strategy around your public cloud VMware offering. And to finish up here, before I hand it over to Mark to talk about it, we do have some solutions around AWS migration services, how to step for step use their tools alongside CVS to get some data services in here. And it'll walk you through how to use these tools. And this is a disruptive failover, right? Things need to be shut down and brought up on the other side, but there are some tool sets around this. And essentially it coordinates with a Cloud Block Store replication and from an on-premises flash array and a VMware environment, as the case may be, to move these data sets into the public cloud. So it can help you for the customers that are having on-premises flash arrays that don't mind a disruptive failover, to use our replication from a VMware environment into the cloud. And a similar concept for Azure as well. They have two different tool sets: Azure Site Recovery, which is more focused at DR, and Azure Migrate, which is more focused at migrations. And with a similar tool set, on-premises flash array replicating into Cloud Block Store. So before I hand it over to Mark, how do I get started? How do you check this out? How do you start using Cloud Block Store? Well, really the same place where you start with anything in the public cloud is their marketplaces. You can deploy CBS from the Azure Marketplace or the AWS Marketplace. And you can also purchase the licenses, or you can get a POC, free trial license as well through Pure or through the marketplaces as well. So you acquire the license or the POC, trial license through one of those two terms, and then you go into Azure and AWS Marketplace and actually deploy the product and apply that particular license. The Azure offering is an ARM template that gets deployed through the marketplace directly. And then at AWS, it is a CloudFormation template that gets deployed. Very similar processes that deploys the background requirements and essentially builds the product from a template inside of AWS or Azure into your particular organization or subscription or VPC, as the cloud may be. And of course, for folks that are using newer tools around deployment, we provide an official Terraform provider to deploy CBS as well. And this works for both clouds. And so if you prefer the Terraform method as well, this will kick off the CloudFormation or ARM template for you in either one of the clouds. And we'll be continuing to update that and move it forward. So to sum up here, a couple different things. Cloud Block Store allows you to deploy our offering and our storage on demand into your own Azure or AWS infrastructure. We can provide the ability to use those rich feature sets and integrations that the FlashArray itself offers. And then you can connect and provision storage to really any VM or EC2 type, right? There is no limitation because, oh, this storage can only go to this type of EC2 or this size, or this feature only works with this model. There's a lot of flexibility in what you can present to, because we're talking to and presenting to the OSs themselves, not the underlying VM layer. And of course, the key thing around Pure as a service and CBS is that you have some flexibility to make this choice. You don't need to be rushed to make a decision, so you can make the right one when you're actually ready to. So I'm going to hand it over to Mark here to talk a little bit more about what Cirrus is doing and how we can combine our technologies to help you with these migrations, especially with the ones that are looking for non-disruptive migrations, which is certainly a key point.
Thank you, Cody, and thank you everybody to joining our webinar. First, a little bit about our company. Cirrus Data Solutions has been around for a little bit more than a decade, and we had our start with an appliance-based migration that leverages our patented, what we call TDI, Transparent Data Path Intercept. And the beauty of Transparent Data Path Intercept is in its name. It's transparent. We have the ability to essentially go into a data stream, intercept the data that's there based on protocols, and then move the information from its source to its destination non-disruptively, as Cody had indicated. We have partnerships across the industry. Pure is one of our primary vendors that we work with there, and we do, in addition to Cloud Block Store, we do all kinds of data migrations across the paradigm. We all know that the cloud storage market is a big market, right? The industry itself, it's a $50 billion market that's growing at better than 20%. The on-prem market is a very large market as well. It's relatively speaking flat to down a little bit, but the truth of it is our technology applies to both marketplaces. And the reason that we're talking today is really associated with why is this the right time to be talking about cloud storage modernization? Well, first and foremost, the cloud marketplace, the cloud storage marketplace has been there for a long time. But if you look at for a Gartner resource assessment, predictably controlling and optimize your premium cloud storage, AWS and Azure owners can pay 29-fold times their cost of SSD per terabyte. So that means that the cost associated with managing high performance storage in the cloud is a much more expensive option than the difference on-prem. We see all flash arrays being bandied about on-prem as being equal to or actually lower than your on-prem hybrid storage. The same paper talked about looking at what customer priorities are, and this really cites and highlights Cody's point of, what are we trying to do here? 84% of IT enterprises cite that I want to do something about optimizing my costs in the cloud. So we want to move to the cloud, yes, but we also want to optimize in the cloud. And quite frankly, Cloud Block Store happens to be the answer. The answer to I've got this series of applications that are running in the cloud. Well, what do we want to do? Well, as Cody pointed out, we want to leverage dedupe compression and snaps. Just so you know, when you make a snap, enterprise features in the cloud, when you make a snap, it's not really a snap in the cloud, it's a clone. And that means two things. First and foremost, from a cost perspective, you snap a terabyte volume, you get a 2 terabyte bill. 1 terabyte for the original volume, another terabyte for the new volume. The other thing you have is it takes about 30 minutes to an hour to make a 1 terabyte snap. This is not the enterprise capabilities that customers are used to when they have on-prem things. So when customers are looking to get predictable, manageable, lower cost, they need a solution like Cloud Block Store to go off and go take a fully inflated volume, thin, dedupe, compress it, and get free snapshots, clones, and replicas. But the question is, how do I get there? Whether I'm already there on-prem, already there in the cloud, or from an on-prem resource. And that's really where Cirrus Data Solutions comes in. So we have the ability to take from any data center, any data source that's block. We are the block people. We don't do file, we do block only. And our block infrastructure allows us to take any block resource, whether it's Fiber Channel, iSCSI, SAS, or any other block storage, and migrate directly to Cloud Block Store. No interim steps. I can come off of anything that's an on-prem resource, land directly in Cloud Block Store. I also have the ability to move non-disruptively amongst tiers in the cloud. Now, this is a really very interesting use case because I treat Cloud Block Store as just another tier. So if I'm running today on standard SSD and I want to take a look at running on Cloud Block Store, I have the ability to non-disruptively pick up where I am while I'm running, move it over to Cloud Block Store, and decide if that's an ideal solution for me. Finally, I have the ability in a hybrid cloud environment to pick up and move cloud to cloud. I have the ability to go from Azure and land on AWS Cloud Block Store and actually realize the data mobility associated, the freedom of data mobility. I have the flexibility to go and bidirectional. Each one of these capabilities is bidirectional. Let's take a look a little bit closer at the individual solution for Cirrus Migrate Cloud. Let's say we have some on-prem application that's running and I've got some block environments. So first and foremost, Cirrus Migrate Cloud is a cloud-oriented solution. So we have our own cloud portal. You log into the cloud portal, you point to your on-prem resources, and a software agent is deployed. It self-discovers the ones that are associated with the applications. We organize those into migration waves, and then we start migrating. Cirrus Migrate Cloud does this transparently. And just like the pure kind of Cloud Block Store capability, we do data reduction. So when you're launching from a on-prem solution going to the cloud, first and foremost, we de-zero and compress. That allows us two very important capabilities. First and foremost, we don't overwhelm your telco infrastructure because we're doing a data reduced move. The second thing it does is it reduces the time dramatically. We see somewhere between 4- and 8-fold data reduction and time reduction in moving resources from on-prem to the cloud. And of course, everybody's worried about security as they go from on-prem to the cloud. Well, our migration is fully encrypted going from on-prem to that cloud environment. We've introduced a new capability here called cMotion. And what's critical about cMotion for customers is that cMotion allows you to flip the I/O path from the on-prem block infrastructure to the cloud infrastructure while you're running. No downtime. I want to validate that I can actually run this in the cloud. Great. So what cMotion allows me to do is to temporarily shift that IO. I'm running in an on-prem server infrastructure, and I'm actually running against Cloud Block Store. And when I flip that over there, I can do it as a temporary flip, create a snapshot up in the Cloud Block Store. Great. Now I've got a copy of a crash consistent copy in the cloud. Now I'm going to revert back, and I can revert back by just sending those change blocks back to the on-prem resource, continue to run there. But now I can create an instance in the cloud, validate that this is going to work the way I expect it to, get all the things right with my application that may be different in the cloud from on-prem, and do that in kind of a risk-free environment. Eventually, I'm going to want to cMotion back, and we've been keeping change blocks going back and forth so that our instance in the cloud is a very close instance to what's on-prem, and then we go into a sync mode for cMotion cutover. And what that allows us to do is transparently synchronize the two instances on both sides. I then shut down my on-prem instance, start my cloud instance on Cloud Block Store, and the only time for transition is the time it takes me to shut down my on-prem and turn on my cloud instance. That gives me great capabilities from a flexibility perspective, minimizes application downtime, which, application downtime can cost $30,000 an hour to $300,000 an hour if you're talking industry norms. And I've already validated it in the cloud, so I already know that I'm going to be successful when I get there. Let's talk about between tiers. Now, there are some tools for between tiers in the cloud in AWS, but they don't exist in Azure. So we look at Azure. Let's say we're running a Postgres database SQL server against standard disk in the cloud, and I want to get to Ultra Disk, or I want to get to pure Cloud Block Store. Well, so I've got my workload running on an SSD. I want to migrate over. And what we essentially do is we put the agent in the instance of the server. We migrate the data, and we do that transparently and non-disruptively. And then we use cMotion. And what cMotion does when we don't have to go between on-prem and the cloud, cMotion does this dynamic move from my standard disk over to Ultra Disk, or ultimately to Cloud Block Store, and do that completely transparently with zero downtime. So now I'm actually running my Postgres database on Cloud Block Store on Ultra Disk, and I can do that transparently, validate that it's working fine without committing it, and I can even switch back and decide that I want to go back for right now. I'm going to cut over next weekend. And eventually what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut over, but I can actually optimize my Postgres environment, validate that it's on pure Cloud Block Store, and successfully running with data reduction and everything else totally transparently. So I can optimize my cloud environment in AWS and in Microsoft Azure with no downtime. So we can get you to the cloud with very little downtime, only instance downtime, in the cloud amongst tiers with no downtime. We can also go between clouds. So let's say I'm in the hybrid cloud environment and I've decided that I want to go from Microsoft Azure Managed Disk, and I want to get over to Cloud Block Store on AWS. So fundamentally, the sense is that there are no tools from Azure to get you to AWS. Likewise, there are no tools to get you from AWS to over to Azure. And what we have is the same process of Cirrus Migrate Cloud. We do data reduction, and this is critically important in the cloud because you have egress feeds. Well, we de-zero and compress before we leave Azure. We encrypt so you are secure, and we have the same cMotion capability. And what that gives you is the sense that you are data reduced, you are secure, and we have this cMotion capability again. We have the ability to actually have an instance in Azure running against a disk infrastructure that's in AWS, and we've demonstrated this in multiple instances for clients, and we can do the same for you. This cMotion can be temporary. I can slide it over there non-disruptively while running in Azure, or I can make it as a final commit. And that final commit, of course, is going to require that we shut down the Azure instance and start up over on AWS. Again, trivial downtime because we have the ability to snap on the AWS side and validate that that's going to work well. So we have the minimal amount of downtime required to get you there. Free is not free. You know, there are tools out there that are out there, and Cirrus Data Solutions is not a free tool. But let's compare ourselves, and we did do this comparison where we took let's migrate to from on-prem into the cloud. And what we did was CMC, Cirrus Migrate Cloud to Azure versus Azure migration tools, or Cirrus Migrate Cloud to AWS versus AWS migration tools. If you value your time, application impact, and time to value, well, these three tools can be fairly costly. And, you know, we're not just migrating 1 terabyte, we're migrating lots of 1 terabyte volumes. And if you put this at scale, if I look at, I have to move 100 1 terabyte volumes, you can see that we can take 6 months to a year down to a month with a Cirrus Migrate Cloud solution. This is critically important. And of course, that migration to the cloud can be directly into Cloud Block Store, and we can do this for you. So at scale, free is not free. There's a powerful set of requirements to get this work done in a high priority fashion so that we can get the outcome we want in the cloud. So let's take a look at a video now. I'm going to make sure I have share sound. Okay, so we've done David Saman from Pure has done a demonstration. Let's take a look at that demonstration.
Thanks for joining us. This video demonstration will show how to migrate an on-premises disk to Pure Cloud Block Store in AWS using Cirrus Data Cloud. To begin, I have an Ubuntu box here that I've already installed the Cirrus Data agent on. When I look at it, I have a disk that is provisioned with a local file with about 10 gigs of data from a database. Within the Cirrus Data portal, I'm going to go ahead and migrate to my on-premises machine and choose Migrate Host Volumes. In this case, since I will be doing a remote migration, I need to set up a new connection from my on-premises machine to my machine in AWS, and I will specify the IP that it should use and connect. Once the link is established, I can go ahead and now select the remote migration, select the remote host, and click Continue. I will select which disk I want to migrate, and since there is no destination found, I can auto-allocate the host and volume directly on Pure Cloud Block Store. I can either use an existing host or have it configure one for me. And what this will do is through the integrations, go ahead and enable and configure iSCSI on the cloud-based EC2 instance, as well as configure the host object on the Pure Cloud Block Store array. Once it is completed, it'll show environment prepared. Now we can have it auto-allocate the volume directly on Pure Cloud Block Store. It'll look at the size of the source disk and go ahead and create it on the Pure Cloud Block Store and set up the iSCSI login and allocate the volume. Once it has completed, we can click Continue to begin the migration. We can provide a description, specify a resync interval, and the ideal impact level to move your data. If you want it to be done as quickly as possible, choose the relentless option. Now we will click Create Session, and this will begin the data migration. Now that the initial sync was done, it is now tracking changes. It will either resync at the next interval, or you can trigger a synchronization. The next part is to do a cMotion. This is the Cirrus Data application that will go ahead and cut over production IO to the new storage. So we're going to hit Continue and say yes. Once cMotion is in place, the next step we are going to do is finalize the cutover. This cutover will now activate the Cloud Block Store volume to be mounted. Now we will navigate to our EC2 instance and mount our iSCSI disk to our mount point. If we review the data that is sitting on there, we can see that our database files have now been replicated directly to Pure Cloud Block Store on our EC2 instance.
And what's remarkable about this is that in that short period of time, we see that, David Seaman, thanks to you for putting that together for us. But the truth is, this doesn't take a PhD in storage to figure this out. It self-discovers the LUNs, it auto-configures the Pure infrastructure, it automatically mounts them and takes that into consideration. So this gives us the ability to actively manage from a, oops, gotta go to the next page here. Whoops.
Thanks for joining us.
Sorry. So what do we get with doing this, right? You get over to the benefits of Pure Cloud Block Store. Remove thin dedupe compression, predictable lower monthly costs. Predictable becomes a very important characteristic because, we're used to taking snapshots and clones and things like that, but we don't want to see our cloud storage bills double, triple, quadruple. It allows us to retain and enhance best practices, get your snapshots, clones, and replications together, and it gives you consistent capabilities across cloud vendors. In a hybrid IT world, you want the flexibility of mobility. You want the idea that you can move it. You don't want to have to say, I'm going to do snapshots and clones differently in AWS versus Azure. The only way you can do that is with a solution like Cloud Block Store. What we bring, Cirrus Migrate Cloud, gives you the ability to take advantage of Cloud Block Store. You can get there quickly, easily, non-disruptively, and the truth is, this is value for you, right? So you get a predictable lower cost of cloud storage, you get all the enterprise features you want, we get you there with little to no downtime, and Cirrus ensures that there's no application impact. We choose minimal impact if we know we're migrating on-prem. We choose relentless if we know we have a window under which we're getting there. So with that, we are offering a 5 terabyte free trial. You can click on the button here when we send out the presentation, but the bottom line is we think that this is a tremendous offer. You can get your free offer from Pure, you can get your free offer from Cirrus, you can get going on a Cirrus plus Cloud Block Store solution for your environments today. And with that, I think we're gonna turn it back over and open up for questions.
And while people are thinking of any questions they might have, I'm going to launch a poll here just to figure out, what's your current focus on public cloud migration? Is there one? What's your preference? Certainly would like to hear what people's targets are. These things are always fun to watch, so especially as they build out. All right, I'm not seeing any surprises right now. So the top three are the top three, it seems like. All right, so very cool, very cool. So we'll let people continue to answer that. So in the meantime, right, so if you want to check out Cirrus Data, go to that link and check out their website, what you can do there with their tool. And of course, from a Pure Storage perspective, purestorage.com or the AWS or Azure Marketplace if you want to check out deploy CBS, deploy it in your environment, see how it can help some of your applications. Of course, certainly reach out to your account team. And if you don't have one, you can go to purestorage.com to find one, right? We can set you up with someone as well. But if you have any further questions around the technologies, the products, certainly jump onto our support site as well at support.purestorage.com. There's a content page there for Cloud Block Store with public details on what the product is, how to use it, and some of our solutions as well. And of course, check us out on YouTube too. There's a bunch of videos such as the one you just saw that are available to rewatch and watch some more. All right. Just taking a look at the poll here. And it looks like, yeah, the top three, AWS, Azure, GCP, with a little bit of leaning towards Azure, which is what we're kind of starting to see these days. A couple years ago, that was a different story. It was quite the diagonal, but Azure is really picking up some ground here. And I think, OCI is picking up steam too, especially, there's certainly some advantages to running Oracle on there. So it makes a lot of sense for folks that we're seeing go that route too. And I think that the I'm not sure yet is, I think that's been kind of growing. We've seen, especially in the past year, with COVID and everything, everyone's kind of taken a step back. It's like, all right, let's really figure out our strategy. So, that seems to be a sentiment that makes sense, right? It's like, what are we want to make sure we do the right thing here, right? Because making the wrong choice can be expensive. So taking some time to think about it, understand your options, I think is a smart move. So, alrighty, if there are no other questions, I want to thank everyone. I want to thank Mark, of course, from Cirrus, and Emily as well. But Mark, any final thoughts before we close up here?
Well, I think it's a great opportunity to engage with Pure and Cirrus, and I think that this is the kind of technology that's there. I know that Emily wanted me to throw up a slide on the follow-on webinar, which looks actually pretty exciting. Emily, you ready for me to throw that one up?
Yeah, absolutely. Great. We thank you all for joining us today on our exciting webinar with Cody and Mark. We do invite all of you to join our upcoming event on September 22nd called the Game Changer Flash for the Entire Data Center with our host, CashCab's Adam Grow. So you may register using the QR code at the bottom of your screen using your cell phone camera. And then also remember, a new webinar should pop up at the end of this webinar when you close out with a short 6-question survey. And we really do appreciate your feedback. You will all receive a follow-up email with a link to this recording. Thank you for joining and have a great day. Thanks.